Greetings to members of the media, stakeholders involved in this process, the academic and administrative staff of UCT, as well as postgraduate student teams present here this afternoon. We are gathered here as part of a continuing process since we discovered in February 2017 that we have in the UCT Human Skeletal Collection 11 human remains that were unethically acquired, 9 of them from Sutherland. It is important that we remember, above everything else, that these skeletons represent 11 human beings. The fact that Dr. Victoria Gibbon found these remains in our collection is remarkable in itself. Her care in bringing this situation to our attention set UCT on an amazing journey to establish the connection between people living in Sutherland today and their ancestors, whose lives and deaths might otherwise have gone unnoticed and unrecorded. From the moment we realized that we had these skeletons in our keeping, UCT's first priority has been to reconnect them with their families if possible. The fact that we are able to do so means that we have been able to participate in a process that has been transformational for all of us, for the university, for the family, for the Sutherland community, and for the South African society at large. This work has been led by the Deputy Vice-Chancellor for Transformation, Professor Loretta Feris, and the Office of Inclusivity and Change at UCT. One of the lessons of this process is the importance of reconnecting community members to their past and to their own story. Apartheid and colonialism identified South Africans simply by race. A strong element of transformation must be the recognition of ourselves as individuals. We, as South Africans, each have our own story. We each have our own heritage, connected by DNA and by the memories that we help keep alive. The power of family and the power of community and of national pride begins by recognizing the dignity of each individual. One of the lies that the colonizers and the apartheid government has been to claim that Africans or Africa does not have a history, and that the land was unoccupied by humans, that there was no culture here before the arrival of colonizers, and that Africans never really belonged here. We know this is not true, but these skeletons help to verify that we do belong here as Africans. The heritage of the Sutherland community and the families represented by these skeletons is no longer based on just oral history. We now have concrete evidence. Providing this sense of identity is an important part of building national pride, building justice and true democracy. People need to know who we are, and people need to know who they are. Family history and heritage were stolen from South Africans, just as land was. This sense of connection, the sense of identifying with a place and a community, is no different from the identification of people that people had with District 6 before the Group Areas Act. It is no different from the way people who live in the Bo-Kaap today feel. This process is a part of every South African's heritage, because these skeletons, which are most likely of San or Khoi origin, represent a part of South Africa's past. The country's history is important for all South Africans, whether their families originated on this continent or were brought here as indentured laborers or slaves. This process sets a precedent for government policy for future reburials, something the government is developing but has not yet formed into legislation for the country. It points the way for the future restoration of other skeletons by establishing a process as well as key points to take note of. Such a policy is not just about finding a place for our honored dead, but also about leading South Africans into redress for our country's pre-democratic past. And this kind of work is not possible anywhere but at a university which has required resources, including academic staff who are committed to social justice and redress, access to historical records, research skills and resources, high standards of academic rigor, and to establish the best likelihood for historical accuracy, collaborative relationships across academic disciplines to develop a holistic picture of the persons who left these skeletons, and the ability to collaborate with other universities and with organizations such as the National Geographic Society, FACE Lab at Liverpool, John Moores University in the UK, and the Max Planck Institute for Science and Human History in Germany. Academic excellence, socially responsive research, and the objective application of knowledge can uplift our self-image and re-establish the importance of South Africa in the world, not just as a place of natural resources, but also as a people who are prepared to be global citizens. The remains of these people provide a connection to a past and a history lost through generations of oppression. The connection that has been restored is not just between different generations of a family, and not just between history and the present day. It is a connection to our past as human beings. It is acknowledgement of the deep historical roots of San and Khoi people in this area of the Northern Cape and South Africa generally. It is an affirmation that this is the land of Africans, our history, our heritage. It is an affirmation that our future belongs to us as much as our past. On behalf of UCT, I want to thank everybody who's been involved in this process. Professor Feris and the Office of Inclusivity and Change for leading this process, the government stakeholders involved, including the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, the Office of the Premier of the Northern Cape, the Karoo Hoogland Municipality, and the South African Heritage Resources Agency. The members of the traditional Khoi leadership, and especially members of the Sutherland, Abraham, and Stearman families who've worked with us since we started this journey. I also wish to acknowledge the role of the 5 UCT academics on the scientific team. Dr. Victoria Gibbon, who will speak to you just in a moment, and Professor Simon Hall, Professor Nigel Penn, Dr. Tinashe Mtsavangwa, Professor Judith Seeley, as well as the 4 academics from international institutions. These are Professor Carolyn Wilkinson and PhD student Catherine Smith of the FACE Lab in Liverpool, John Moores University in the UK, and Dr. Steven Schiffels and PhD student Joshua Ketzinger from the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Germany. In addition, I acknowledge the support offered by this team, to this team by the 9 postgraduate students from UCT. What an opportunity for our students to work with the top team on this very amazing journey. They have demonstrated that if we are willing to acknowledge the deal and deal with the pain of our past, we can open the way to a better future. I'm going to hand over to Professor Loretta Feris, our DVC for Transformation, who managed the process together with the Office of Inclusivity and Change. Loretta.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. Good afternoon, everyone. My role here this afternoon is to provide you some context into what has led to this research project and the outcomes that you will be seeing here today. Now, as the Vice-Chancellor has indicated, we have acknowledged previously that we have these 11 individuals, 9 of which are from the Sutherland area. And we know that as a university, when we discovered the remains, it was a moment for our university that was not a proud moment. And we apologize to the nation, to the affected communities, that we have been complicit in obtaining the remains in an unethical manner. But I do believe that this road that we have followed has put us on a journey where we could actually begin to restore some of the dignity to the human remains. Now, I should just re-emphasize that as soon as the remains were discovered, a moratorium was placed on them by the head of the Department of Human Biology, Professor Malcolm Collins, and the collection and all records pertaining to these individuals were sealed until such a time that there was a collective decision to reopen it to conduct some of this research. And I will come to that collective decision in a moment. But also, of course, at the time that we started this journey, we were intending to apply for a reburial permit from the South African Heritage Resources Agency, SARA. And so we therefore also followed a public participation process for reburial in line with the requirements of the South African Heritage Resources Act. Now, the archival documentation in the collection indicated the surnames Abrams and Stearman. And so through our public participation process that led us to Sutherland, we were able, through oral narratives, we were able to trace the descendant families of the Abrams and the Stearmans. And through this process, we have worked with them as the descendant family in terms of also then becoming our partners, especially in respect of the research. But of course, as part of the public participation process, we consulted more broadly with the Sutherland community as a whole, as well as Stearman families in the Western Cape, as well as the Eastern Cape, who contacted us following our initial media conference last year. We furthermore engaged with the current owner of the land on which the graves of 8 of the individuals were located, and also with farmers' associations in the area. In addition, we consulted with the Sutherland local government, as well as the Northern Cape Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and the National Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. The process is not yet concluded, and we continue to engage with stakeholders. I do want to note here that following the conclusion of our public participation process initially, we did submit our permit application as well as a reburial plan to SARA. And one of the outcomes of that public participation process and the reburial plan is that the reburial will actually take place not at the original site on the farm where the graves were located, but will instead be located in a historic cemetery in Sutherland, where the community of Sutherland may have more ready access to the graves. And so in light of this, SARA notified us that as reburial will occur in a municipal cemetery, that a reburial permit is no longer required. Of course, in line with our own ethical obligations, we continue to participate and engage with all relevant stakeholders. Now, early on, as we started engaging with descendant families, the families indicated that they would like to learn more about the 9 individuals. They wanted to understand how these people lived and also what their relationship to each other may be. From the university side, we made it clear that we have some capacity in terms of research and what we could offer as part of a process of restoring dignity to these individuals, but also to allow the descendant family and the broader Sutherland community to reclaim their history and their heritage. So what the family requested and what was agreed to was the following: that we would survey the original burial site and verify that this is indeed where the remains were removed from. That as a university, we would examine the history of the farm and of the Roggeveld area where the farm is located. Thirdly, that we would conduct a biological profile of the 9 individuals to provide insight into where they lived, their diet, the conditions in which they lived, to determine their gender, their height, their age, and to establish any medical conditions they had and also the cause of death. We also agreed that we will conduct ancient DNA analysis to understand the genetic relationship amongst the individuals. In other words, there was no testing between the skeletal remains and any living human, but the analysis was confined to the human remains. Finally, that we would reconstruct the facial features of the 9 individuals so that we have a fair sense of what they may have looked like. And this was done with a generous sponsorship from the National Geographic Society. Now, the outcomes of this research is what we are presenting to you today. And I would like to stress that as a university, we walk this journey of research in a very mindful manner, ensuring that we agree to both process and to outcomes with the descendant families, and ensuring that the principles of ethics, care, and restorative justice guide the process throughout. And so now I would like to hand over to Mr. Anthony Mitas, who represents the Abrams-Stearman families, who has partnered with us in this research project.
Thank you, Professor Feris. Firstly, let me acknowledge the university, the leadership of the University of Cape Town, the leadership of the Khoisan, our mayor from Karoo Hoogland Municipality, Mayor Feris Wenzel, our councillor for Karoo Hoogland Municipality, Councillor Davids. And then also very importantly, let me acknowledge all steermans all across South Africa. This has been a remarkable journey for us, which turned from shock into excitement today. This is about restoring the dignity of our ancestors. At one point in our lives, we all were confronted with the questions, who are we? Where do we come from? What is our heritage? And this is as a result of a brutal system called apartheid in South Africa. However, from great difficulties arise opportunities as well. If it wasn't for the integrity of this university, with the discovery of the remains in February of 2017, we would not have known that our ancestors were at the university, the remains of them were here. And I'd like to emphasize that throughout this journey, the emphasis will always on restoring the justice and do the redress rather than the scientific output which came as a result of this journey. And for that, as a family, we are much grateful for the leadership under Professor Feris and Professor Pakeng, who drive this process for us. So our initial contact with the university came across in September of 2018 as a family, when a lady by the name of Mrs. Doreen February were contracted by the university to visit Sutherland and to undertake this process. Unbeknown to her, and as part of meeting all the stakeholders in the Sutherland community, our paths crossed. And without her even divulging any information to us, we went along the discussion of, we always wondered what happened to some of our ancestors. And we were in the process, me and my brother, of trying to put together the Steerman family tree. And unbeknown to me, it was the purpose of Doreen's visit in Sutherland, which in retrospect, she was also shocked at that particular point in time. So then after that, we had a meeting, we had engagement, public processes. We engaged on this topic, and we explore this through oral history, which my great uncle Alfred will tell you more about. In November of 2018, we were served with a preliminary report, a biological report. And this enticed more curiosity from the family. We wanted to know more. So our request as the family to the university was to embark on the process of doing a ancient DNA analysis for us, of doing a final biological report for us, and of doing a facial reconstruction for us. For us as a family, and even in the Greater Karoo in the Northern Cape, it was always known to us that indigenous people were around. But given the past, that history was not reflected and were not randomly available for us to pursue. So it's a great importance to this family. And that's where the excitement is coming from today, is that now we have the scientific proof to say that people, indigenous people, were around in the Karoo, in Sutherland specifically. And the emotions, if I have to tell you of what we experience as a family, it's a sad reminder of a past, yes. And it's a sad reflection when you get this factual information. But of greater concern to us, of greater benefit to society, is that not only will Sutherland community, but the broader South Africa will have access to information of the people on how they stayed, how they lived, and where they are. There might be more families out there confronted with these questions as we were as a Stearman family. And hopefully, one day they will undertake this same process. And we realize how fortunate we are as a family for these remains and to undertake this process. Finally, my family has requested me to convey a sincere thank you for the transparent and open manner in which the university, as well as Doreen, has embarked on this journey. And I think Doreen deserves all the credits that she can get, because she made the connection for us between the university and the families. And that was an important connection, because at the initial phase there were questions asked. Questions of why only now, after all these years. But as the process unfolded and trust were gained in each of these parties, and the openness and the transparent manner in which things unfolded, answers were given. And for that we have to thank as a family, the university and Mrs. Doreen February. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony Mitas. Thank you, Professor Parking. Thank you, Professor Feris. We have heard from the family, we have heard from the UCT executive, and now we are going to hear more about the scientific study that was undertaken by this team of 8 academics, supported by 9 postgraduate students. Over to you, Vicky.
Okay, thank you, Elijah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm speaking today on behalf of the full scientific team. So I'm going to do my best to represent everybody. I will do my absolute best. But first of all, before I start, including all of the students who have helped us and had the opportunity to work on this project, as a scientific team, we want to acknowledge and thank the Sutherland community and also the Abram and Stearman families for bringing us on this journey with you. It has been an incredible moment for all of us. I would also like to thank my department, with special mention to my head of department, Professor Malcolm Collins, and head of division, Professor Graham Lowe, not only for their support throughout this process, but also the moratorium you placed was a critical piece in this restorative process. And we thank the university leadership for your guidance and your support, accepting responsibility and apologizing to the community for what took place almost 100 years ago. That was a turning point in this process. And with special mention to Professor Feris, DVC Transformation, as well as Doreen, thank you to both of you. If it weren't you, we would not be here in this moment. So it's really hard to believe a year ago we first met the Sutherland families with your request for as much information as possible. I left that Sutherland that first trip thinking, there's no way this can happen. How can I put a team together to do this? But everyone I called said, what can I do? How can I help? No questions about how can we pay for it? How can we make anything happen? Just it would happen. So to the full scientific team, each of you are professors, you're leaders within your discipline. Thank you for your willingness to participate, to make this a priority, and fit it in amongst all your other responsibilities. And also to those of you who aren't in the room with us, we thank you. And today we sit here with one of the most comprehensive set of analysis completed in a restitution project globally. Together, we have brought a picture of what life was like for these people in Sutherland in the late 1800s. This interdisciplinary team of researchers from arts, humanities, natural, social, health sciences, involving international and local team members, with the Sutherland family and their community, have been incredible partners and show the immense value of interdisciplinary and community collaboration. So now I'm going to focus on the science, which I know is for many reasons why people are here. And it is too comprehensive for a short media conference. But I'm going to do my best to summarize the key points. So one of the standout features for these 9 individuals is the detailed archival records that accompany them. So these are the records that were recorded at the time of donation. These people were removed from their final resting places and donated to the university. Our investigations found reference to the donor being called a doctor. And after some digging in the UCT archives, we found this medical degree certificate confirming that Carl Coutier of Christ Revere Farm was a registered student at the UCT Medical School when these individuals were donated. The records provide information, such as 8 of these people lived and worked on the Christ Revere Farm, and after their death, these 8 people were buried on that farm. 7 of them from the labor cemetery, and 1 was buried in the mountains on the farm. And the other individual turns out to be a pre-colonial person, radiocarbon dated to around 700 years ago, and was accidentally exposed in a road cutting. Our archaeologist, Professor Simon Hall, did an analysis of the farm. In particular, the farm labor cemetery at Christ Revere. He found a total of 38 or 39 graves, and with 6 of, possibly 7 of them being disturbed. And the fuzzy lines presented on the graph in front of you represent those disturbed graves. These are the graves where some of these individuals were removed from. A full analysis of the cemetery with the archival records has been conducted. And Professor Simon Hall has accompanied with the families and university delegation to the farm to see where these people came from. So our historian, Professor Nigel Penn, has shown Christ Revere Farm was in the Rockefeld region. This was a bitterly contested frontier zone between Khoisan and colonialists. The Khoisan resistance to colonial encroachment in this area began in the 1740s and continued well into the 19th century. Colonial commandos were responsible for committing many massacres and genocides in this region and placing subjugated Khoisan as laborers on surrounding farms. Often these people would come onto farms as children, and possibly where our 2 of these children, who I'll speak of today, came from. The next few slides, I will be speaking from the biological analysis with some archival information, which is from my own work. The remains consist of 7 adults and 2 children. First, I'll speak of the children. The older child was a girl, 6 to 8 years of age, and she showed periods, at least 4 periods of physiological stress when she was younger. Now, these are periods of malnourishment, infection. Maybe suggests why she passed so young. The younger child was a boy, 4 to 6 years of age. There was no evidence on his bones that tell us how he passed or why. 6 of the adults had recorded first names in the records, and 2 had surnames, Cornelius Abram and Klaus Stearman. The dates of death for the individuals ranged between 1875 and 1913. We know that 5 of these individuals were adults. 5 of the adults were male and 2 were female. Overall, the adults had relatively short stature. They showed signs of heavy physical labor and extremely active lives. For example, osteoarthritis was common in all of them. There were some signs of healed trauma, such as a broken nose, broken fingers, and cheekbones. The knees and the ankles show evidence that instead of sitting, these people habitually squatted with their feet flat on the ground. This is a culturally important sitting position among Khoisan people, and it's one piece of evidence for people maintaining traditional patterns of behavior in a rapidly changing world. Nearly all of these adults showed signs of poor dental health. Dental infection was widespread, and globally, we know, was a leading cause of death before modern dentistry. Poor dental health was likely exacerbated in these people by life on the farms, where people had access to a more Western-style diet, including a high degree of cereals and sugars. And 2 individuals showed evidence of an untimely death, both of them with cranial trauma. Klaus Stearman and the pre-colonial individual. Now, what I can say about these injuries is they would have died quickly, and they wouldn't have suffered. So moving on to the chemical analysis of stable isotope ratios, which was done by Professor Judith Seeley. The bone and teeth of our bodies reveal information about the environments in which people live. The results show all 9 individuals are from a very dry, mainly winter rainfall environment. These individuals came from Sutherland and surrounding arid, dry areas, not from the Eastern Cape, where there was more summer rain and higher rainfall overall. Comparisons of the teeth and bones give us information about the life histories of these individuals. And as you can see on this graph, the red dots are the results, and if you were from the Eastern Cape, you would have a signature that would fall in that blue circle. The molecular analyses was done by our archaeogenetics team from the Max Planck Institute, Dr. Stefan Skiffels, and PhD student Joscha Kretzinger. They examined ancestral relationships among these 9 ancient individuals. No DNA was done on any living people as part of this study. DNA results show that these people were related to the San 2 speakers, with some individuals showing the highest affinity to the Kamani San. And these individuals that we had the best coverage for were Klaus, Sarchi, and Yannicka. And because we had such good coverage, we could do more analysis, and we found them to be closely related to the Kamani San. In the archival records, family relationships are suggested among some of these individuals. So what we found was Yannicki, Sarchi, and Klaus are related to different degrees, 3rd degree and 2nd degree. The DNA results also show the adults were not the biological parents of these children, but that doesn't mean they weren't their caregivers. We know that children were taken from their parents and brought into farm as laborers. We can't say they weren't raised by these people. The facial reconstruction was completed for 8 individuals with skulls present. So 1 individual did not have a skull present. This was done by PhD student Catherine Smith and Professor Caroline Wilkinson of the Face Lab, Liverpool John Moores University. The CT scans were developed at UCT by our Dr. Tanashi Machavangwa, and he shared these with Face Lab. Their work is entirely digital and non-destructive. The bones of the skull are the scaffolding for our soft tissue anatomy. Face Lab's methods allow highly accurate reconstruction of face shape, and each one was prepared individually. The texturing, including suggested clothing and hairstyles of those around me, were based on visual research looking at 19th century and modern photographic portraits of San and Khoi people from the Western and Northern Cape provinces of South Africa. Decisions were informed by the biological analysis, and the final depictions present these individuals as they most likely would have appeared at their approximate age at death. So they have been age profiled. So to summarize, the analysis of these 9 people provide glimpses into the lives of San and Khoi people from Sutherland in the late 19th century. Life was physically hard. Conditions such as tooth decay and infection caused death. There was a good deal of violence, and many children lost their parents. Despite these challenges, these people maintained some of their cultural identity, shown, for example, in the grave style and how they chose to sit. They show us hardworking people who face very difficult circumstances with perseverance and resolution. The Sutherland community and families would like this story to become widely known. We are discussing the possibility of producing a book in partnership with the families, where their stories can also be captured. A quick look at the tourism industry in Sutherland today speaks to the colonial history, to space, and to stargazing. But where is the deep historical recognition for San and Khoi people in this area? It's missing. The Sutherland families and communities want knowledge, information of their history to be acknowledged and preserved for their children. A celebration of the strong historical linkages. These 9 individuals have brought us together and provide a platform to do this. A memorial is planned for Sutherland, commemorating its deep historical roots of San and Khoi in the Rockefeld region. This will be completed in collaboration with government, many levels of government, Sutherland community, the Abram and the Stearman families, the university, and involved researchers. This process has established a significant bond with these families and the people from the region, and we look forward to our continued role in this journey with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Dr. Victoria Gibbon. I am now going to take this opportunity to call back our panelists back to the front, and as they do that, I am going to just make a quick announcement that if you happen to have misplaced keys, they are available at the media desk outside. So as they join us, I also am going to call the academics. The 5 academics will join us as well up front just in a moment, as soon as our seating arrangements are restored. If I could have the academics please joining us. So we've had the first family rep speaking earlier on. We now have the second family rep who is going to just quickly give us a bit of a reaction to what was outlined or what was discovered by the scientific team. I now hand over to Mr. Alfred Stearman.
Goeiedag, dag sê almal hier teenwoordig vanmiddag. Vir my vandag is dit 'n voorreg om hier te kan praat namens die Stearman familie. Jy weet, ons wil dank en waardering uitspreek aan die universiteit. Professor Feris, Dr. Gibbon, Dr. Pakeng en almal wat saamgewerk het in hierdie proses om vir ons die inligting bymekaar te maak. Want dit was vir ons baie belangrik om die inligting te hê sodat ons kan bevestig wie en waar vanaf ons kom. Nou soos ek by grootouers gehoor het dat die ontstaan van die Stearmans het tussen Vreesburg, Wollaston en Carnarvon gebeur. Het omtrent reg rondom Sutherland omgewing in die boundaries van Sutherland het hulle gefloreer. En my oupa en my ouma het op 'n plaas gewoon met die naam van Driefontein. Dan die oupa van Anthony het op 'n plaas gebly met die naam van Basterskraal. En so dan ook het ek gehoor dat daar nog ander mense van my oupa grootjie gewoon op 'n plaas tussen Wollaston en Carnarvon met die naam van Kosplaas. Maar ons sal nie daaroor so baie praat vandag nie. Die DNA het vir ons bewys gebring dat die mense wel van die Sutherland omgewing was en nie van die Oos-Kaap nie. Ons wil net attent maak daarop. Dan wil ek ook vir die Doreen, wat daardie groot myl met ons geloop het. Weet van die dag dat ek haar ontmoet het sy daai inspirasie in my geskep. En die dinge wat ek al die jare oor gewonder het, so om en by 50 jaar, het ek gewonder oor al hierdie dinge. En vandag het ons tot by die waarheid, of so na in die waarheid gekom, dat ons weet precies dat ons is mense van daardie beenherdere wat gevind is. So daarom wil ek vandag van hierdie geleentheid gebruik maak, om vir die span wat daar betrokken was, Professor Feris, wat die span gelei het, baie dankie. Dr. Gibbon, baie dankie. Prof. Simon en al die mense wat daar betrokken was. Ons diepste waardering gee ons vandag vir julle as Stuurman familie. Baie dankie.
Baie dankie meneer Alfred Stuurman. Ek is baie seker dat vandag jy en die familie is almal bly. That's only as far as I can go. So all those Sutherland trips benefited me. So we are now going to move on to the next part of the program, which will be Q&A sessions. We don't really, as Dr. Victoria Gibbon said earlier, we don't really have as much time as we would have loved to have for a media conference of this nature, but we are going to use the next 10-15 minutes for Q&As. If you have any questions for any of the 5 panelists, that is the executive, the family, or the curator, as well as any of the 5 academics, if you have any questions for this, I am going to take questions in rounds of 3 per round. And if you cannot get your questions answered during this session, please do not despair. We are going to have one-on-one interviews after the media conference. So from 1:30 onwards, you will still get another opportunity to ask any of the panelists, except just the VC who has to dash somewhere, but any of the panelists will be available for one-on-one interviews. They are not going to happen in this room. They are going to happen in various areas within the same building, and we will make an announcement just as we close. So any questions, if I can note 3 hands. If you want to ask, please just mention your media house, your name, as well as the name of the panelist or the academic that you wish to direct your question to. I've noted 2 hands that side. Is there a 3rd hand? Oh, there is a 3rd hand that side there. So shall we go in that order, please? Then the first 2 and then the 3rd.
Thank you. My name is Elsie Brits. I'm a freelancer, but this story will be for Vrije Weekblad. I just want to know a bit more. Did you publish any studies, and also where? And then also, what kind of DNA did you use? Did you use Y chromosomes in DNA? And how easily was it to get? What kind of DNA did you get? And what did you? Can you elaborate more? What kind of DNA did you use, and what did you do with it specifically? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Monique Motlok. I'm from ENCA. I have 3 questions. The first one is, why did it take so long for these remains to be found to have been unethically obtained? What is the process when it comes to checking the remains that are in the skeletal collection? The second one is, how many if I can say, skeletons or remains are there in the collection, and what are they generally used for? And the third one, on the topic of the burial that's being planned, any idea yet when that will happen, and if it will be a private occasion or if the media can come?
My name is Sonke Mlamla from the Cape Argus newspaper. To Professor Feris, I just want to know the overview and the resolution from the last meeting you had with the Stuurman from the Eastern Cape, since they also claim that the remains are part of theirs. Thank you.
Okay, if we may take the responses, please.
Sure. Elsby, I'll respond to you. So we have not yet published any of the scientific findings, but we do have permission from the families to do so and plan to in the future. With regards to the DNA analysis, so ancient DNA is extremely technically challenging. Mitochondrial DNA, there's thousands of copy in every cell of our body, so it's much easier to obtain. We achieve full mitochondrial DNA sequences for all 9 individuals. And so we have 100% accurate results with that. With the nuclear DNA being only 1 copy per cell in the body, we had less well-preserved results, and actually 2 individuals, we didn't have any reliable results. So we only had reliable results for 7 individuals. All 7 showed broadly a correlation to 2 speakers. And also, we had extremely good coverage for 3 individuals, and were able to do further nuclear DNA analysis, and that's what allowed us to look at more specific details showing closer linkages to the Komani-san. Does that answer your question? Perfect. Monique, I'll also answer your first 2 questions. Why so long, and what is the process of finding what was in the collection? I can't speak for those before me. I became the curator of the collection in 2016, and during the process of taking over as manager of the collection, in light of what's been happening nationally in communication about ethical and unethical use and procurement of human remains nationally, I came back from a conference and looked at everything in the collection, which is when I discovered these 11 individuals. So we have 11 individuals that are unethically obtained from within South Africa, and 9 of which come from Sutherland. So we've started the restorative process with these 9. In terms of how many in the collection, I can't answer off the top of my head, but I would like to speak for why we have human remains at universities. So human remains come from a variety of sources, the majority of which come from personal donation or state donation for teaching purposes in the training of our health scientists and medical professionals. And so the primary reason they're in the university is for research and teaching purposes, but also we are a temporary storage, safe storage for the state. SARA, heritage agencies, they also store remains with us because not everyone can have human remains. The university is a legal repository for safe storage. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks. So, Monique, in terms of the question with respect to reburial, we were hoping to rebury in September of this year, but we had to continue our engagements, in particular also with the Stearman family from the Eastern Cape, and so that meant that we had to postpone. Also, in addition, I think this research has now indicated a very strong link to the Khomani-san. And so as a result, we've reached out to the traditional leadership structures of the Khomani-san, and we are hoping that we will shortly meet with them as well. So we hope that we will be able to rebury in the early part of next year. So Sisonke, yes, we had a meeting in October. The team went to the Eastern Cape. I was unfortunately not able to fly. I was sick at the time, but I did Skype into the meeting, and we had about a 4-hour-long engagement with representatives of one group of Stearmans. I should also say prior to that, we had a meeting in Sutherland where 2 different groups of Stearmans were present, and we engaged with them whilst we were in Sutherland as well. But this was a meeting that was very specifically aimed at meeting with them and understanding and trying to address their concerns. One of the requests is that we rebury in the Eastern Cape. And that we couldn't find a resolution on because we are following best practice in this regard, which is that you rebury in the area where the individuals were found, and that is our intention. And as the research now indicates, these individuals are from the Northern Cape, and it's only appropriate that we return them to rest finally in the Northern Cape, and to not, as a university, decide that they actually should be buried somewhere else. So on that issue, we didn't find a resolution. But we did undertake that. We understand that they are linked as Steermans to other Steermans, and that we would want to have them play a role in the final reburial. We would certainly want them to attend, and that we would, to that end, facilitate that as much as we can.
Thank you so much. Due to time, I'm going to just limit the next round to just 3 questions, just one per media house, please. And as I've indicated, you do have an opportunity for one-on-ones. I saw a hand right at the back. That's the first hand I'm recognizing. Is there a second or a third hand? Yes, no, maybe? No. Okay, we'll just go with Ati.
Ati Mtwana from Newsroom Africa, Channel 405. I just want to confirm the memorial service. I know you mentioned that the funeral will take place sometime next year, but you also mentioned that the memorial service will also be a process where all spheres of government will be involved. Can we just get a time frame of when? And are there any more visits that are going to take place to the farm, to the site, anytime soon?
I think let's just take the response and then we'll go to one-on-ones, please.
So there's not a memorial service. There's planned for a memorial, which is commemorating San and Khoi people, and we don't have a timeline on that yet. That's something to be determined as we move forward. Our focus as a university is on the reburial as the next phase. In terms of revisiting the site, there are no plans to revisit the cemetery at this time. However, we do have a full cemetery report, which is ready, which is complete.
Thank you so much. As indicated, I think we will just pause our Q&As at this point, and we will go into one-on-ones after we would have ended the media conference. But before we do that, I am going to ask Professor Feris just to give us some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Elijah. I just want to thank the media for coming. As I think some people have indicated that the family really wants to tell their story, and I think it's important that and this is a good story to tell. I think it's a story that speaks to restoration of dignity. It's a story that speaks to healing. And I think in that regard, we're grateful that the media has decided that this is, in fact, a story to tell. I think it's important for our broader project of reconciliation in this country to walk this journey. And so we really appreciate that you've come today. From my side, it's been an absolute honor to lead this process on behalf of the university. I don't think that for any of us in the executive who had to deal with this, with a part of the history that we certainly had an impact on all of us as this executive, as people that were oppressed, having to apologize on behalf of the university wasn't easy for any of us. And so for me personally, it has been a journey of healing as well. But I also want to thank the leadership of the university, in particular Prof. Bakeng, who's allowed this process to unfold in this way and supporting this process in this way. And then I think she's acknowledged the partnerships that has come through this process, without which we wouldn't have been able to do this. I think just in terms of if we had to find the funding for any of this analysis on our own, it wouldn't have been possible. And so we're really grateful to the partnerships. And then I think to the family for the gracious way in which they have accepted the fact that we came, I think, initially with very bad news, but finally we're very open in walking this journey with us, not just the family, but also I think the Sutherland community as a whole has really embraced this, and so it has been really in that respect a fulfilling journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Feris. Yes, we can give a round of applause. Thank you so much, Professor Feris. Thank you so much, Professor Parking. Thank you so much, the family representative. Thank you so much to our academics. And that's how we come to a close of this media conference. Thank you very much, everyone.